Let's do this. All right. I am going to ganache my cake today. So I am making a three-tiered cake for my chief's retirement party in a couple of days. And I am going to ganache the cakes today. So today is what I call ganache day. There's baking day, and that's when I bake the cakes, and then let me turn down the volume on this one. Let's see. Okay, so there's a baking day when I bake the cakes, and then I put them in the freezer. That was like a week ago I did that. And then there's ganache day where I basically frost the cakes with ganache, cover them with ganache, and then they sit out overnight. The cakes have been thawing in the fridge since this morning, so I moved them from the freezer to the fridge this morning. So it started thawing a little bit, but it's still cold, so that it's easier for me to ganache the cakes, but also to carve them or shape them if I need to do any of that. And then tomorrow is fondant or modeling chocolate day, and then the rest of the decorations. And then the day after tomorrow is presentation day. All right, so I'm going to start with my 10-inch tier. And I haven't done a live in so long, so I think I know what to do with answering questions, but we'll see. Okay, so this is my 10-inch tier, and what I have ready, just so you know the equipment that I have, of course I have my cake turning, what's this thing called? A cake turner? Can't think of that right now. Okay, I need two scrapers. I like the metal scrapers when I'm using ganache, because I can also heat these up with hot water, then dry off the water, then they're still retaining the heat, and I can smooth out the chocolate really well. I've got two of them, and I'll show you why I want two of them. Of course, an angled spatula, and then I've got different acrylic discs for different sizes. I'm going to show you how I use that to create a perfectly straight finish on the ganache. And ganache is really the only thing that I like to use to cover my cakes. Sometimes I'll use Swiss meringue buttercream, but ganache is my favorite because it gives me a nice firm finish on my cakes. So I made the ganache this morning. This is a 2-to-1 dark chocolate to heavy cream ganache. It's set up, so it's been since 7 o'clock this morning, so let's say about 12 hours. So this is now the consistency of like a soft peanut butter, and that's exactly what I want. This will make ganaching my cakes super easy. And then I have pulled out my cake tiers from the freezer, or sorry, from the fridge, because they were in the freezer already. And I'm going to get ready to frost my 10-inch tier. So I've just got, and actually I don't want that one, I want this one, because this one is going to be eventually the one that I use for serving. Alright, so I've got my 10-inch acrylic cake. Oh, hi, somebody just asked, what am I cooking today? What cake are you making? So, I've got a 3-tier cake, and this is a chocolate cake. I've made 3 tiers of chocolate cake, because that's what my chief likes. This is my chief at my hospital. And so I'm making chocolate cake. It's already been filled with dark chocolate ganache, because I want it all chocolate. So what I like to do is build it in my cake pan. So as you can see, I put a little bit of parchment. You're going to see that in a minute. And I cut the cake after they've baked and cooled, and then I build it in the cake pan. And this saves me a lot of time. I put the ganache between the layers, then wrap it with plastic wrap and put it in the freezer. And that way it's already filled, and I don't have to worry about trying to get it like perfectly even and all that stuff. This takes care of it. So you're going to see that. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is just put a little bit of ganache on the bottom cake acrylic disc, which is a 10-inch acrylic cake disc. And I'm going to show you how I flip this cake out. It's super easy. This is why I love doing it this way, building it ahead of time. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to center it here. So I've got a little bit of ganache to hold it in place, and we can still fix this later. It's not completely set yet. All right, so here's my cake pan. I'm flipping it over, and it's going to come out pretty easily. Sometimes it's a little cold, but there we go. All right. So then I want to make sure it's centered on my cake board. Okay, and I still have time to fix that if I want later, but it's pretty centered. And then this is the parchment that I used to build the cake in the cake pan. So now this is going to come off. So you see it gives me a nice smooth finish on my filling. I don't have to worry about the filling not being even or squeezing out. I got a little parchment stuck in there, but that's okay. I can take that out easily. With my spatula. Okay, it's just a little parchment that was stuck there. It's no big deal. Alright, so then I'm going to finish removing the parchment. This is what I use to line the sides of the cake pan. Alright, those are the sides. So nice and even. Then I'm going to remove the top parchment. This was actually the bottom parchment, but now it's the top. Alright, and now my parchment is gone. And so now this perfectly straight side with the filling is going to make it super easy for me to coat it. And I won't need to do two coats, like a crumb coat and then a final coat. I'll just do it all at once. That's what makes this technique so cool. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure it's straight on my acrylic cake disc, because I'm going to show you how I frost it, and it's going to be, I need these cake discs to be even. So that's why I'm going to do this. So this is why I need two of these. So first step is to make sure that I have room to frost. So I don't. I'm going to push it over a little bit. I don't need that much room. I need maybe 1/8 of an inch for my ganache. And so I want to make sure that before I start frosting, I have 1/8 of an inch of room. 1/4 inch is also okay. But I need to make sure that there's some space between this metal spatula and the sides of the cake. So far we're doing okay. If there's not enough room, I'll just shave it down a tiny bit. I don't need that much ganache, so this is looking fine so far. That's just a little bit of ganache there, that's okay. I'm going to shave there a little bit. What I'm going to do actually is, while I'm shaving, I'm going to collect the bits so it doesn't make a mess here. So this part needs a little trimming. So if I need to trim, this is how I do it. And this is just to give me more room to ganache. So I just want a little bit of space to ganache. Okay, a little bit more space there. And these are just, you can see very small pieces that I'm shaving off. I really don't want that much ganache because it gets to be too thick of a coating. I just want to be able to do like 1/8 of an inch on all sides. I need more room there. Continue shaving, just a little bit, very tiny pieces that I'm shaving off. This is making a lot of noise. Okay. All right, I'm happy with that. So I've shaved off the extra bits that were hanging off. So I needed to make sure I had room to ganache. Okay. So the next part is we're going to put the ganache on, and then we're going to put a cake disc that matches the size of this bottom cake disc so I can get a really smooth side. But first I'm going to wash my hands. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of ganache on the top. We don't want a really thick coat. This on this side. That should be enough. So just enough to get that top covered. I don't need a lot of ganache. And then we're going to put the acrylic disc on top. So I've got a 10-inch acrylic disc on the bottom, and I'm going to do the same size on top. And this is good, I'm happy with that. It does not have to be perfect yet. We're going to use a level to make sure it's straight also. So don't sweat getting it absolutely smooth, because we have a way that we're going to make it smooth. Alright, so now we're going to put the top acrylic disc, and it's the same size as the bottom, and then the important thing is to get these two discs aligned, right? Okay, so that's why we have two of these. So we're going to go around making sure that these two acrylic discs are aligned, meaning that if I need to push over with this one a little bit, I do that, so that the scrapers are at a 90-degree angle on each side. So I'm going to go around, do that a couple of times, so that I know this way if the disc needs to be moved over one side versus the other, we can do that now. And if you put time into this at this point, we'll be happy with it later. We don't have to worry about it being crooked later and trying to fix that. So I think I'm happy with this. I'm just going to do one more look here. Yeah, I'm happy with this. Then my final step is I'm going to make sure it's level. So I have this little level and we're going to set it here. It's almost perfect. Just had to press down a little bit on that side. I'm going to do one more. Good. Alright, so now the cake is level on the sides, level on the top. And now we can feel confident about ganaching this cake without it turning out awkward, crooked, limping up to one side or leaning to one side. Alright, so now we're going to ganache the sides. Actually, what I want is this on this side and this on this side. Okay, of course, that's okay. Don't ganache there. Alright, so I'm going to be careful because I have my modeling chocolate pieces there and I don't want to get them messy. Alright, so we're going to do ganache. This is my peanut butter consistency ganache. And I'm going to just hold the acrylic disc on top. I don't really need to hold it because it's pretty much glued in place by the ganache, but it helps me hold myself in place. And then I'm going to put the ganache on the sides of the cake. Move this over a little bit, move this over a little bit, and here comes a visitor. I knew she couldn't stay away for very long. Samira, close the door.
Wait, I need to see if it's really live.
Okay. I am in my cake studio / laundry room, but there's no escaping them for that long. Alright, so we're gonna go around the sides, and you see once you've got the discs aligned, this is so easy, and we're not even gonna have to do a crumb coat, second coat, all that business. We're going to be done with one coat. One done.
Okay, it's really live.
Okay, close the door and be quiet. Alright, that's why I love ganache. It's so easy. It's a little messy, I'll give you that. I mean, my husband complained about chocolate all over the place, but it is so easy for cake decorating and it gives you a beautiful finish. And who doesn't like to eat ganache on their cakes? Okay, so that's it. And then we're going to take this and we're just going to gently scrape away the top layers of excess. We're not going to go all the way down to the cake. We're just going to take away one layer now of excess ganache, and then we'll keep going until we're happy. And because I didn't make the cake discs, the acrylic discs, much bigger than the cake itself, I don't have to put a lot of ganache. So that's nice for two reasons. You're not wasting money on a lot of ganache, which is expensive because of the chocolate, but also because you don't want a thick glob of chocolate. You want to be able to enjoy the cake as well as the ganache, right? Okay, so now I'm getting closer to the cake. And don't worry if you see some imperfections. We're going to go back and fix any imperfections. But as you can see already, we're getting a pretty nice smooth cake. And this is setting up pretty quickly, remember, because it did thaw in the fridge, but I only have been thawing it for about 12 hours, so it wasn't completely thawed, which is fine, because I like it to be somewhat cold when I'm doing this. But the ganache is going to set up quickly, So, you know, you can't walk away from it and expect to come back and scrape it, because you won't be able to scrape the chocolate once it sets up. Alright, I'm happy with that as far as my first scrape. I'm just going to go back now and fill in some holes and some imperfections. But as you can see, most of our work is done already. We got a hole there, hole there, hole there, little scrape there, little piece of cake peeking through here, a little bit of cake peeking through there. All right. Pretty happy with that actually. Okay, so now we're going to do another scrape, but first I am going to, actually I can use this one now. Yeah, I was going to go ahead and wash my scraper, but I've got a second scraper so I can use that for now. So this, now I'm going to go, not like so much at a 45-degree angle like I had before. I'm going to get closer. It's almost like a 15-degree angle to the cake now. So now I'm not aiming to scrape off as much. Now I'm more aiming to smooth. So by getting a tighter angle with the cake, I am smoothing more now and scraping off less. And you can see that the cake is starting to look really nice and smooth. Sometimes I'm aiming to get like really perfect finishes, and sometimes depending on what I'm planning to do with the cake decoration, I like don't spend a lot of time being super obsessive about the smoothness. So it just depends on my project. Today I think I would like to get a pretty good finish, but it doesn't have to be perfect. There is going to be quite a bit of modeling chocolate decorations on this cake. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to do one more smoothing, and to do that I'm going to get this hot. So I'm going to walk over for a second and heat this up with the water. So now it's pretty warm, but I've dried it off obviously. And now you can see that it's going to give a nice smooth finish. My last scraping on the ganache. It's still a bit warm, so I'm going to keep using it. Just step back and take a look at that. I think there's a couple more places I want to fix, but I'm just going to take a step back and look at it from back here. I think I can do a little smoother on that. I'm going to try one more very thin layer of the chocolate to get slightly smoother finish. But then I'm pretty happy with this. And like I said, this particular cake is not going to be, does not have to be perfect, because there's going to have a lot of decorations on it. So I'm going to do one more very thin coat and then scrape it one more time, and then I think I'm happy with that. So the chocolate, as you can see, is still pretty soft. Still that soft peanut butter consistency. I'm trying not to put too much on because I don't want to have to scrape too much off. But I just want a little bit more smoothness to my cake. Okay, good. So that's good enough. And again, with the tight angle to the cake, because I'm not trying to scrape off a lot of chocolate right now. Okay, good. I'll probably go one more turn around, take a little bit more off, and then we're done. So you can see with this third very thin coat of ganache, I've got a really beautiful smooth finish. I need to take a little bit more off, and then this tier is done. And again, tight angle. So as you can see, I'm scraping against the bottom acrylic cake disc and the top acrylic cake disc. And that's what's guiding my movement. Very nice. Okay, almost there. Where do you want to go? Okay. Good. There's just one little spot I want to work on. And then I'm going to leave this alone. I try to leave well enough alone because I find that if I try to be too nitpicky sometimes, I'll just make a mistake that wasn't there before. So I'm going to try not to be too nitpicky. Okay. Oh, of course I stuck my finger in there. And here's just one needs a little bit more work. Alright, now I'm going to leave it alone. I am happy with that. And we are going to move on to the 8-inch tiers and then the 6-inch tiers. and do exactly the same thing. So now what I'm going to do is put this in the fridge, and you'll see, I'll show you later how we're going to take the top off very cleanly once this ganache sets up in the fridge. So about 15 minutes in the fridge, and then we'll pop off the top. And then I'll come back and do the other tiers.